A woodsman in the forest sees a terrifying view. His co-worker seems knocked down by some unknown force. Feeling both nervous and curious, he grabs his axe and moves toward the scene. He freezes in terror as he sees his co-worker's body hacked to pieces with blood everywhere. Snapping out of his shock, he bolts through the forest, desperate not to share his friend's grisly fate. In his panic, the man stumbles and falls right into a hidden trap. His fingers claw at the rocky edges, wooden spikes below, ready to impale him. He gasps for air, struggles out of the pit and runs away. Suddenly, a snap his ankle catches in a trap, yanking him upside down into the air. Through his blurry vision, he sees a strange man with a skeletal face walking toward him. Cut to two couples planning their adventure into the primeval forest. Someone voices concern about their lack of survival skills, wondering if they are just paying to suffer. Jack confidently assures them that he's bought 2 kayaks. Going downstream will be nothing more than casual sightseeing. That put everyone's worries to rest now. The next day, all 4 met at the meeting point. Jack even brought along a professional guide. This reassures everyone about their journey ahead. Little did they know they were about to embark on a journey of no return. The guide is thoroughly professional, insisting on life jackets and spending considerable time teaching them proper kayaking techniques. He asked them to put phones and other valuable items in waterproof bags just in case. Only Bearded Johnson refused to surrender his phone because he wanted to take photos as a memento. Once ready, the group set off along the river, heading into the deep forest. Their guide kindly shared some stories and rumors about the forest. Years ago, his grandfather disappeared in this area. Locals believed he fell victim to cannibals after villagers discovered his belongings deep in the forest. Human bone fragments were found in excrement nearby. Seeing their uneasy faces, the guide quickly spoke to ease tension. Cannibals inhabit the deepest parts of the forest. No one has seen them in almost a century. But in recent years, deforestation has rapidly shrunk their territory and the prey they can hunt has become increasingly scarce. They'll probably all starve to death soon anyway. Meanwhile, 2 adventure vloggers rode their motorcycles to this forest. A no-entry sign stood at the path, but for more views they decided to ignore the warning and venture inside anyway. But minutes after entering, a shadowy figure lunged, impaling the vlogger's throat. Sensing something wrong, the woman went to check and turned pale with fright. Her companion had been decapitated by someone. She screamed and ran the other way. After frantically running through the forest, she discovered a dark cave. She thought hiding inside would keep her safe. But the cave felt strange and unsettling. With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone, no signal. All she could do was record a desperate plea for help. The next moment, her companion's head rolled to her feet. To her horror, she'd stumbled into a cannibal lair. Meanwhile, Jack and others remained absorbed in the scenic wilderness. Some even leaped into the river to play when caught up in fun. With all clothes soaked through, the guide had to find a place to camp early. Darkness crept in unnoticed. Seeing the blonde's fascination with cannibals, the guide launched into another detailed story. According to legend, cannibals don't immediately kill their captives. Instead, they immobilize them so their children can learn to hunt. This is nothing short of savage brutality. Just then, the Bearded Johnson appeared, jealously cutting short his girlfriend's animated conversation with the guide. Afterwards, they all went back to their hammocks to sleep. But late at night, Johnson secretly met with Jack's girlfriend. Who knew their relationships were so complex? The next morning, they were shocked to find Jack missing, along with the guide's kayak that contained everyone's valuables. The guide thought Jack took the money and ran, but others disagreed. They chose to search the river for him. Soon they reached a fork in the river with raging rapids on one side, calm waters on the other. Jack had no kayaking experience. He must have taken the calmer route. However, the guide refused to proceed, warning that the path ahead led through cannibal territory. After Johnson and the others repeatedly pleaded and promised to double his payment, the guide reluctantly agreed to lead everyone forward. Fortunately, they soon came across the missing kayak, but there was still no sign of Jack anywhere. A sense of dread washed over them all. Had Jack met with some kind of accident? The guide flatly refused to go any further, agreeing only to wait 1 hour before paddling back with or without them. Left with no options, Johnson and the others ventured into the jungle, hoping Jack hadn't strayed too far. Soon their faces grew tense when they found fresh blood on a tree trunk, but they could not yet tell if it belonged to Jack or not. Meanwhile, back at the river, the guide noticed movement nearby and glimpsed a shadowy figure darting between the trees. He bravely walked toward the dense forest. The guide's expression turned grave as he saw several scarecrows on the ground, all dressed in human clothing with numerous ornaments hanging from the surrounding trees. The guide thought the hat resembled his grandfather's, but what he saw next sent chills down his spine. The guide sprinted back to the kayak, thinking he had escaped the savages. But just then, meanwhile, completely unaware of the threat, the other 3 discovered a cave entrance in the mountainside. They found a motorcycle helmet that likely belonged to the missing vlogger earlier. Suddenly, a figure appeared. It was Jack, who had been missing. When his girlfriend confronted him, Jack claimed he'd left because he needed to walk off some gas and indigestion. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief seeing Jack unharmed. Johnson, remembering guide's warnings about cannibals, insisted they needed to leave. But when they reached the riverside, the guide had vanished. They thought the guide had abandoned them. But then Johnson stumbled upon the guide's dagger, suggesting something bad had happened. Now everyone was anxious and eager to escape from this primeval forest quickly. Minutes later, they found the guide's kayak, which was covered with fresh blood that had not yet dried. Jack spotted a steaming pot on the shore of the river. They approached curiously, only to let out horrified screams. They found the guide's severed head cooking in the pot. Terrified, all four backed away, desperate to flee this place of trouble. Johnson couldn't help but curse. If Jack hadn't wandered off, none of this would have happened. They failed to notice a figure quietly diving into the water. They paddled frantically, only to find their path blocked by a fallen tree. Johnson moved to lift the kayak over. But as he leaned down, he spotted something lurking beneath the surface. Suddenly, a figure lunged from the water. Caught off guard, Johnson was attacked before he could defend. His friends rushed to help. The blonde smashed a rock against the tribesman's head, allowing Johnson to deliver the fatal blow, finally eliminating the savage. When they came to their senses, they realized the kayak had drifted far away downstream. Stranded without transportation, the group had no choice but to continue on foot. They had no idea that the tribal warrior they had just beaten was not dead. The red-hooded one found his wounded tribesman and showed no mercy, slitting his throat before carving out his heart and devouring it raw. This was clearly a much tougher opponent. Meanwhile, Johnson and his three friends wandered aimlessly through the primitive jungle without a guide. Darkness fell unnoticed as the four of them trudged on, completely exhausted. Johnson naively thought the cannibals would not pursue them. The long-haired girl remained anxious, remembering the guide's warning. These cannibals were like predators who only spare their prey when they aren't hungry, simply saving their meal for later. This reminder made everyone's hair stand up. Jack suggested they take turns with Johnson keeping watch to stay safe tonight. During his watch, Johnson checked his phone out of boredom. No signal, otherwise they wouldn't be in this mess. Plagued by jungle mosquitoes, Johnson thought of a desperate idea to coat his entire body with mud. After all, plenty of animals in the wild do it too. This unplanned mud coating helped him avoid being spotted by the red-hooded tribesmen. Johnson silently drew his dagger from behind, but he had severely overestimated his combat skills. Even with a sneak attack, the red-hooded one overwhelmed him completely. Jack rushed in after hearing the struggle, but barely distracted the attacker. Losing his footing, Johnson slipped and tumbled down the steep hillside. When he finally scrambled back up, Jack had already been captured by the red-hooded one. 3 more tribesmen stood nearby. Johnson knew he stood no chance of rescuing Jack, not with all of them watching. Johnson could only whisper an apology before quietly retreating into the bushes. Soon after, Jack was hauled back to the cannibal tribe by force. They severed his ankle in one strike. Just as the guide warned, he became prey for cannibals training their young. Jack struggled through the forest in pain before being hunted down by the cannibal offspring. Finally, as daylight broke, Johnson roused the 2 women from their sleep. He lied about Jack going to find a boat and urged them to continue through the forest. But deep in cannibal territory, there was no easy way to escape from danger. Sure enough, within minutes, tribal sentries had them in their sights. The 3 ran like mad in panic. Jack's girlfriend took the lead, only to plunge headfirst into the cannibal's trap. A wooden stake pierced her shoulder. Johnson spotted a rope from a tree and used it to lower the blonde woman to safety. He cut the wooden spikes with his dagger and saved Jack's girlfriend. They couldn't rest at all as the cannibals were still trailing them from afar. Ahead was another pool several meters deep. With no better option, the blonde plunged first. Johnson and Jack's girlfriend leapt after her. Downstream, the current slowed and the water level dropped below their knees. They spotted a kayak beach nearby and quickly climbed aboard as if it were their last hope of survival in this ordeal. Drifting downstream beats running aimlessly in the woods. They had gone without food for more than a day. Both women quickly fell asleep due to exhaustion. Johnson, however, remained alert and watchful. He saw shadowy figures moving along the shore. The cannibals wouldn't give up the hunt. Johnson made up his mind, quietly swam ashore, and took out his phone. He decided to record a final video message. Meanwhile, the red-hooded one was stealthily approaching, tracking the sound to locate Johnson's phone. While distracted, Johnson ambushed him from behind, knocking away his weapon, but still proving no match for the savage. The red-hooded one noticed the 2 women in the boat. He stuck his dagger in a tree, found a vine, and wrapped it tightly around Johnson's neck. As the cannibal waited for the kayak, Johnson reached for the dagger, severed the vine, and hurled the blade with his remaining strength. The cannibal fell into water in pain. Johnson engaged in another fight with him. This time, fortune smiled on him. His hand closed around the cannibal's blade. Breaking the surface, he drove the blade deep into enemy's back before severing the cannibal's head. Just as Johnson caught his breath, more cannibals began to appear. To save the women, Johnson took a deep breath, gripped his weapon, and charged toward the shore. Predictably, Johnson fell under a barrage of clubs, his sacrifice complete. His sacrifice gave the women enough time to escape from the cannibals. They drifted downstream, escaping cannibal territory, and were eventually rescued by a kind driver on the road. And that wraps up the Danish thriller River of Blood, coming to screens in 2025. The biggest takeaway from this film is to never travel to remote and isolated places for vacation. Well, that's all for today, folks. If you like this review, please subscribe. See you next time.